The Leafs do the Habs a solid. As the Coyotes win, the Habs lose, and the Habs are finally back into the top 5 draft pick position. We're going to be breaking down this horrible tankathon game in this edition of Habs Digest. Hello, bonjour, ahoy, and welcome to today's game reaction edition of Habs Digest. I'm your host, Josh Gosse, alongside my co-host, Jesse Poirier, and a quick reminder to hit subscribe if you haven't already, blah, 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 blah. We say this every video. Let's just get right into this. Game 80 ended about as poorly as you could expect as the tank just rolls on. The Toronto Maple Leafs come in and just dismantle the Montreal Canadiens. Montreal couldn't get anything going offensively or defensively. Half the team felt like they mailed it in, but all the same, Jesse, it's not solidified yet, but with some help from Arizona, Montreal is finally back in a top 5 draft position.
Well, that's nice to see. And, they were mentioning during the broadcast that if we do fall in that top 5 position, that dramatically increases our probability of landing with that top 5 pick, by 50%, I believe.
Yeah.
What is it? It goes down to
15%.
What was the percentage?
50, if you're 6th last, it's 15%. Yeah, it's huge difference.
Right. So good thing about tonight, though, is kind of feels like the season's kind of coming full circle.
Yeah.
Well, not quite there. We started off the first game of the season, our first, episode of Habs Digest, on a Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, Habs versus Leafs, so even though we got a couple games left in the season, nice to see, kind of coming around on that. It's been definitely a great first year, but I mean, just, a little bit of a hard effort tonight, not the best effort from some of our players. I'm looking at you, Garyano, a couple of those defensive breakdowns there. We were letting Monty out to hang a couple times tonight. It's amazing that he actually played so well, having 40 saves in a losing effort, I think says it all. And I'm still, could have been much worse even without him. So that's been a common theme of late, but at the same time, the team's a little bit tired. What it really comes down to is we're just super injury depleted at this point in time, while the Leafs are getting ready they're in playoff mode right now. And I think they've finally done the changes where they're going to be successful this year in the playoffs. While we are having some players like Raphael Harvey-Pinard, Gallagher, Montembeault, as we mentioned, coming out to play, unfortunately not the best effort from everybody tonight.
No, there's some people, they're not going to call out any names, but I mean, you can tell, we thought we had some gas left in the tank after that game against Washington, that amazing game where the Habs just rolled. I mean, it gets a hat trick, Matheson with 3 points. After the previous game, we said there was nothing left in the tank. I don't know what happened. They found there was some left in the reserve, and they put that in for the Washington game, and it might be depleted again. The Habs have 2 more games this season, I think, Wednesday and Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that. I think it's Wednesday, Thursday. But yeah, no, this game wasn't amazing. I mean, like you mentioned to me before the game got going, Jesse, the Habs had this recap got going, the Habs had 30 seconds at the start of the game where they looked pretty good. And from then on, they had nothing. I'm pretty sure Montreal had 1 shot after the first period. It might have been 2, but it was probably 1. Rem Pitlick whiffs on a 1-timer on a 2-on-1 with an empty net. Marner scores a power play goal. Pezzetta fights Wayne Simmonds. Wayne Simmonds, Jesse, kind of got the better of the Habs tonight. That fight was just Wayne Simmonds wailing on Pezzetta, and usually Pezzetta doesn't get caught off guard like that. But then later in the game, there was a bit of a scrum where Michael Bunting was getting into it with Joel Edmundson, as Michael Bunting often does, and as Joel Edmundson often does, a big 2-hand cross-check to the back. I thought Bunting went down a little bit easy. The play stops. Simmonds comes in and throws Edmundson to the ice. You knew this game was going to get a bit chippy, but, I'm just going to say it. I found it kind of cool to see Edmundson. I thought he looked okay tonight compared to some other games, and it was cool to see him almost back in playoff Edmundson form. Maybe he had a bit of a vendetta against the Leafs. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely. I think a little bit of frustration. We were getting a lot of penalties tonight, and some of those were definitely our fault, but, I mean, some of those were some soft calls as well.
Yeah.
So I feel at the end with Joel Edmundson, a little bit of that frustration boiling over, the patented 2-arm cross-check there just at the end. But, all in good form at the end.
I mean, the Habs somehow came out of that with a power play, too, and Sheldon Keefe doing his best Paul Maurice impression on the bench was not very happy. I'm saying a lot of flipping hex on the bench, I'll tell you. He wasn't very pleased. But, the rest of the game, Jesse, there were some problems. Kovacevic gets a goal. Let's talk about that. He fires it from the point. I think it bounces off Marner and in. That's the only way the Habs could beat Ilya Samsonov tonight. And as Craig Simpson said at the end of the broadcast, Sergei Samsonov, Habs legend. Don't think he was playing in net. He misspoke a little bit. But one thing I wanted to talk about again, Matheson was good, but I found a big problem tonight, Jesse. I know the Leafs are in playoff mode. They're trying to get everything to click right at the right time as they go into the playoffs to hopefully win their first round playoff series in 20 years. But the Habs just, I don't know what it was. We kind of talked about that they couldn't make a pass tape to tape to each other to save their lives, and they also couldn't even exit the zone. How many times did you see them try to clear the zone just for the Leafs to jump up, grab the puck, or just do something to keep it in? I don't know how to fix something like that. It's just inexperience, being tired. I don't know. What do you think?
I noticed that as well. I think a little bit of the problem tonight was that we were just getting a little bit too spread out. We weren't really giving too many options for the puck carrier to really make a safe pass. So that's why we weren't really able to, string together a couple passes. Our formations weren't really quite as tight, where in comparison to the Capitals game, that was very much on display. We're giving great outlet passes, to our puck carriers, offering that support, proper spacing, but still, not looking for the stretch passes all the time as well. So I found that was a big difference tonight in our game, as well as our defensive play, obviously, which struggled at times. For me, one point that I found very kind of alarming, besides all the penalties and the lack of discipline, which has been a big theme. I think that's just we're a young team, and that's kind of part of it. But what I didn't like so much, Josh, was just how we allowed the Leafs just to kind of set up shop right in front of our net, especially on the power play, just to remain completely unchecked. You had to feel like this was a really hard night for Montembeault. He really had to battle hard with that sort of pressure right in front.
No, that's an awesome point. I mean, the Leafs had almost 50 shots. Montembeault made like 40 saves, even though he let in 7 goals. And on the power play, whether or not it was even on the power play, like you said, the Leafs were getting to their spots without any resistance. And that's been a theme that we've seen a lot from Montreal. I don't know if it's, again, because the players are young, they don't want to I don't want to hit this guy too hard. I mean, Edmondson's doing his job to clear people out. But when you're missing someone like Savard, you're missing Guhle. Matheson is not really that kind of defender, although when David Kampf went for the Michigan, he did just take his stick and just chop at his hands, and no call, and it worked. But no, you're very right. I mean, go watch the replays of these goals. Most of them are just a Leafs player right in front of the net. Now, sometimes some great passes like that Marner saucer over the leg of, I think, Matheson right to Tavares for the tap-in, but there's guys just parked in front of Montembeault, and what is he supposed to do? The announcers, Cuthbert and Simpson, at least on Sportsnet, were saying, you can't put this on the young goaltender, so that to me also, Jesse, is a lot of just effort, right? You're in the defensive zone, just be physical. Don't take a penalty, be physical. And think about the defenders the Habs are missing that are typically physical in front of the net. Edmondson's kind of a shell of his former self. He still does it a bit. We got David Savard not playing. Cayden Guhle not playing. Arber, Xhekaj obviously has not been back in a while. These guys, I think, can make a huge difference. And when you're substituting some size for guys like Schoenemann, and nothing against Schoenemann, but he's an AHL guy. He's not a consistent NHLer. And Chris Weidman, who I don't think has made a defensive play in his life, it's it's tough. It's tough.
It is. They were really just having their way there. It's kind of to be expected. I'm looking at the lineup before the game kind of begins, and everything else, but at the same time, we just, need to, as long as we're keeping up the compete level just for these last 2 games, finishing off the season, I'll definitely be happy with that.
Yeah, me too. A win against Boston would be nice. And hey, again, a win against Boston will be nice if Arizona wins out. Now, that's the thing. That's what we're focusing on now. I think I showed this earlier, but yeah, Arizona there, 69 points, Montreal 68, both with 2 games left to go. And as we mentioned, if you're bottom 5 in the standings, 50% chance to pick in the top 5. Somehow that's still only a 50% chance to pick in the top 5 if you're bottom 5 in the standings, which is kind of nuts. But yeah, it drops to 15 if the Habs move up a spot in the standings. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. But I guess that'll do it for this game reaction edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Help us hit 5,000 subs. Don't know how many people are still watching at this point. This game was ridiculous. We only got 2 more. The tank is almost done. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.